so I think we can all agree that this was the best episode yet. So guys, how are you? I hope you are well. I am the Monio, the interdimensional demon that talks the most about X-Men 97 on YouTube, and you are on my channel. And we reached the 9th episode of X-Men 97, and for me it was the densest episode in terms of character conflict, and I know you want me to talk about the most shocking part of the episode, but I'll get to that. We had Professor coming back and dealing with the consequences of his absence and even the consequences of the world thinking he was dead, and this whole atmosphere of anguish and anger over everything that happened is shaking all that unshakable trust that some characters had in Professor X, especially in Cyclops, who directly questioned Xavier's decision to leave command of the X-Men to Magneto. I believe that what makes this episode so cathartic is the fact that almost all the characters are going through some kind of conflict. Rouge with the loss of Gambit, Cyclops with Madeline and her son, Roberto dealing with the betrayal of her own family, and Storm dealing with the consequences of abandoning the team. And speaking of Storm, I really don't understand why she only appeared now. What was she doing all this time? She found out about the attack in Genosha in real time, and most likely Gambit's death was reported on television. So what exactly would justify her not even going to her friend's funeral, and only showing up because Professor X called? Forge, what were you doing with her this whole time? But in my opinion, the highlight of the episode is without a doubt Magneto, and I think this is probably the audio-visual work that most showed the essence of the character, everything he is and everything he represents, the justified anger of him, that he was doing all that for a cause, and as a response to all the hatred and ignorance of humanity, and that is, in my opinion, what makes him one of the best villains in all of Marvel, not just the fact that he functioned as a counterpart to Professor X, that they are both fighting for the same thing but with different means, but all the complexity that moves the character. Since he is definitely not evil, there is a side of him that really believed and really tried to do things in Charles's pacifist way, but his disappointment with humanity made him prove his point to himself and return to his old path. And in that sense, I really don't understand all of Cyclops' revolt with the fact that Professor X entrusted the X-Men to Magneto, since we had the best possible scenario, with Eric genuinely trying to change, and trying to follow in the footsteps of your friend. The conversation between Professor X and Magneto just before the battle, it is perhaps the most dramatic moment of the episode, with Magneto speaking truths and exposing Charles's mistakes, with very convincing arguments in his favor, and to be quite honest, I wonder if I would have been at least tempted to go to Magneto's side if I were one of the X-Men, as Charles asks Magneto to restore the Earth's magnetic pole, returning the planet to humans, and Eric asks if they will return the lives that were taken in Genosha. And I really don't know what the consequence of losing the Earth's magnetic poles would be, scientifically speaking, but apparently it's going to be something very bad. If you understand this subject a little better, please leave in the comments the explanation of why they only have more a few hours to restore the poles. But back to talking about this scene, for me it was predictable that Rogue would side with Magneto, since she is still very traumatized and apparently blames the professor for what happened. Roberto was a surprise. I thought that despite everything, he would side with the X-Men at least to stay close to Jubilee. Some people had doubts about Nightcrawler's powers, wondering if he could really teleport to a distant place like the island where Bastion is. And the answer is yes guys, he can. There is no physical limitation to the distance of Kurt's powers. If you want to better understand how his powers work, watch my video with 30 facts about the X-Men. There are many interesting facts about the TV series and about some things that happen in this episode. I'll leave the link on the cards and on the final screen. One interesting thing about the episode is that we had the team split into two, which are the blue team, which is the one that will face Magneto, and the gold team, which is the one that will try to stop Bastion. And for those who don't know, this is a reference to the comics, which already had these two divisions. But let's talk about the most shocking part of the episode, the fight against Magneto and Cyclops. In a moment of emotional catharsis due to what was happening to Jean Grey, attacks Professor X, who was about to control Magneto's mind to make him restore his poles of the Earth, and honestly I thought Cyclops' attitude was extremely stupid. I accept and understand that he acted out of the emotion of the moment, but stopping the professor at that moment would have no impact on what was happening on the island. On the contrary, if they had defeated Magneto at that moment and restored the poles, they could have immediately gone to the island and helped Jean and the others, so it was the worst action Cyclops could have taken at that moment. Cyclops' attitude forced Wolverine to interfere, which made Magneto furious and made him remove the adamantium from Wolverine's body. And yes, this is a reference to something that happens in the comics, but this scene, for me, only proves one thing, that everyone who is fighting there and who has fought all these years is not actually trying to hurt each other. It is a fight completely against their will. Magneto has a sincere friendship with Charles. He has an immense admiration for Storm, and has come to say that she is the closest to a goddess they would see. Deep down he doesn't want to hurt others of his race. In fact, no one there does. And the episode makes this very clear when Roberto knocks Jubilee down and then tries to help there. It's not a fight between enemies. So yes, Magneto showed that all these years, he could have easily killed Wolverine, with the metal present in his body, but he never did it out of a kind of mutual respect that everyone there has. But the moment Wolverine crosses this line, Magneto responds by doing the same, which resulted in the scene we saw. And no, I don't believe Logan died. He's basically going to become the second Wolverine from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, who had bone claws. Whoever played that game knows what I'm talking about. But I found this whole battle unnecessary. I believe that Professor X could easily convince Magneto to help them defeat Bastion, who is a common enemy, and only then can they resolve their differences. So it wasn't clickbait. For me, this really was the best episode so far, and X-Men 97 is consolidating itself as one of the best things Marvel has ever done. But what about you? Do you agree with me? Can you explain the issue of magnetic poles? Leave it in the comments, and if you liked the video, subscribe to follow the next content. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.